8 tips for working with properties that are occupied with tenants. If you're working with properties that are tenant occupied, make sure you get copies of the lease at the listing agreement. This seems obvious, but it's often overlooked. And if you can't get copies of the lease, make sure that you get the seller to provide you with a written affidavit that explains the security deposits, rents, and advanced rents. This is a requirement of the Florida FAR Bar contract. In fact, the buyer has the right to cancel at any point up until he receives written copies of the lease. If the property is professionally managed, make sure you get a copy of the management agreement. Management agreements often will have fees that could be advanced before closing, or closeout fees, or a variety of other fees that could be associated with the management agreement. It's important for you to know about these before the closing so there's no surprise. It's also great to get the manager's contact information and to build a relationship with the property manager. Ultimately, it's best if you guys can work hand in hand together to provide a great experience for the seller, for the tenant, the property manager, and the listing agent. Get the tenant's contact information and make sure to reach out to them personally. Explain the process. Let them realize that this isn't going to be adversary, that you're here to work together, and that you want to take their life and their situation into consideration as well. Consider using a 3D, 360-degree interactive Matterport Virtual Tour. This is a great tool that you'll be able to use to reduce the number of showings, but improve the quality of the showings. And what I mean by quality is that the person is able to see the floor plan, they're able to see everything from floor to ceiling and walk through the property as if they're there right from their computer or right from their smartphone. So if you have a property that you think is going to be shown a lot or have a lot of activity, this is a great way to cut down on those showings, but still get maximum exposure on your listing. Get a copy of a seller's disclosure. Now, often owners think because they haven't lived in the property, they don't need to provide a disclosure. That is absolutely untrue. Remember that they've paid for repairs either through themselves or through a property manager. They've owned the property for some time, maybe multiple years, maybe even 10 or 20 years. So they know something about this property and they still have the obligation to disclose. So it's best for you and the buyer, and even to protect the seller, that you have a written property disclosure. In addition to that, if the property is professionally managed, ask the property manager or ask the owner to ask the property manager for a copy of any maintenance log or maintenance requests that have been on the property. This will help make sure that there's no surprises after the property closes. When going to closing, the contract calls for an estoppel letter between the tenant and the owner to clearly define what rents have been paid, what's owed, and what's the financial situation between the owner and the tenants. So start working on this early and make sure that you get this done, because you're going to need this at closing. If you're the listing agent, I would work on it right away. If you're the buyer's agent, make sure that you're requesting it, because you're going to need this or a seller's affidavit. One of the two will suffice, but they are contractually required and will be needed at closing. Confirm that both the new owner and the existing owner or property manager realize that there are notices that have to be made to the tenants, such as where should they now pay rent? And it should be due on the same day, but where are they going to pay rent? And also, who's holding their security deposit? Both of these things are required for them to know. So it's important that you make sure that these disclosures are done so that there's no loss in rent or confusion for the tenant, for the owner, or the previous owner. Make sure that both owners and the title company know that you're expecting for the security deposits and any rents, prorated or advanced rents, to be transferred on the day of the closing and shown on the closing statement. This is going to avoid confusion and make sure that everything is taken care of properly at the closing. I hope you found that helpful. These were 8 great tips to consider when listing a property that's going to be tenant occupied. If you have any other questions or if there's anything we can do for you, please reach out. We'd love to help. Thanks a lot and have a great day.